It has been a week of record highs and excitement following President Trump's announcement of a trade deal with Vietnam, despite reports, a decline in private sector jobs. And it came as the private sector reported a loss of 33,000 jobs in June, raising concerns about the US economy. And there's a lot of speculation as well about what could happen to interest rates and whether Jerome Powell will be in the job by the end of the year. For more, let's bring in Jesse Moores from Spadian Capital. How's this, I guess, the back and forth this week between President Trump writing a letter, sending a chart to the Fed Reserve Chairman, and the Fed Reserve Chairman comes out and says, well, we would be able to cut rates if it wasn't for your damn tariffs?
Feels like a little bit of a Tom and Jerry skit, doesn't it, Aaron? It's quite funny. And some weeks I think Trump is Tom, and some weeks I think he's Jerry, and vice versa with Powell. But look, really, really interesting how this is playing out. I'll track our minds back to about 9 months ago, back in September last year. I doubt many of us read it, but there was a Harvard economist article that came out, an academic article rather, came out talking about what Trump's second presidency could mean for the Fed Reserve's independence. Obviously, he was quite vocal about it in his first presidency, in his first term rather. He had no issue in criticising Powell and all of the governors that sat on the board of the Fed Reserve, and he slowly tried to influence some of them and replace them with his people as time has gone on into this second term. But I think what becomes really interesting now is Jerome Powell, his term does expire May 2026. If he's able to see out to that term, it's very unlikely he gets renewed in his position, and it'll be probably more of a Trump aficionado that comes in to replace him. If he's removed before that, it's likely this will play out through the Supreme Courts, because technically Trump doesn't have the right to remove the Fed chair. You'd be going against the Constitution and all the legalities that are supposed to support and endorse the independence of the Fed Reserve, which was from that act in 1951-53. So it would be completely uncouth if he did it, but it also would be pretty on brand for Trump to follow that path. And then, back to the whole tariff conversation. I've seen, as with all of these things that happens with anything Trump says or does, rightly or wrongly, you've got the two extreme polarizing views. You've had Republican constituents come out this week and say, but look at all of the GDP generation that Trump is going to bring in through these new renegotiated trade deals, through this, smoke and mirrors tariffs approach. But then conversely, you've got the 33,000 odd private sector jobs that have been lost as a result. And you've got the Rust Belt, which are significant supporters of Trump, significantly struggling with all of the tariff impacts that have occurred in that segment particularly. So it's really hard to actually argue if it's been the right thing or the wrong thing right now. But I will say, if we are going to see, we being the proverbial viewers outside of it, if we're going to see economic benefit for the US as a result of these renegotiated trade deals, that's going to take 5 to 10 years to materialise.
What concerns
by the time that happens, it'll just be completely
forgotten. Part of the plan, sorry to interrupt, part of the plan for it to work, for the tariffs to work, seems to be that US rates have to lower, and they're not, meaning that Trump's entire plan could then be in jeopardy for the US economy.
100%, and it goes to his unrattled comments last week with his irritation around Israel not abiding by the truce that he tried to broach with Iran. His plan of effectively treating policy with a sledgehammer, both domestically and internationally, is starting to unravel if he doesn't have people like Elon Musk, as you're showing up right now, playing to his every whim, operating in the way that he intends. And if Jerome Powell, as we said, if Jerome Powell is steadfast and decides not to move, and Trump does try to remove him, it's likely going to play out through the Supreme Courts, and it's going to create a much larger cluster problem. I won't use the other word that we normally say in Australia with cluster. It's going to create a significant problem broadly for the I suppose, the very essence of what it means for politics and diplomacy in America.
We're not on free-to-air television, so you can say it, but we like to be polite here at Ticker every now and then anyway. What we say in the office is different to what can happen on air. But when we talk about
text messages, right?
When we talk about Vietnam and the trade deal with Vietnam, we've got the UK, now we've got Vietnam. I mean, as the president said during the week, there's 200 countries. This could take forever. What about poor old Australia and Penny Wong heading over for this Quad meeting? Trump asked about the Quad meeting. He says, I know nothing about the Quad meeting. And Penny Wong comes back to Australia without kind of anything. What is going on between the relationship between Canberra and Washington, or is there just none? Have we been frozen out?
I'm convinced there's some conspiracy here to just pay some of our taxpayer dollars for our politicians to fly around without a lot of return for it. But look, jokes aside and conspiracies aside, I find it very peculiar, right? I mean, Australia's obviously been a very big supporter of all things US military, US sovereignty, US trade for decades and decades. Now, again, you're dealing with an enigma in being President Trump, who deals with policy with a sledgehammer, rightly or wrongly. And not to say that Australia should be comparable to that, because we can't. We can't feasibly be seen to having the same sort of approach, because we don't have the political,
but Vietnam,
the geographical, all of that.
Neither does Vietnam.
Yes, but Vietnam, where I think is quite interesting, used to be a significant thoroughfare for Chinese goods.
Yeah.
That was why he came down so hard on Vietnam originally, because it was well known, and there was a lot of media around it at the time, that even if you had the sanctions on China, it didn't matter, because they were rerouting a lot of their produce or a lot of their exports through Vietnam, Mexico, and parts of Canada. But then obviously he dressed it up through Mexico and Canada as being the fentanyl issue, right? But we all know that was really just the smoke and mirrors play. So,
and that has been the big part of this, is the smoke and mirrors, and that has led to his strategy, which, as we say, has been all over the place. We've got to leave it there, I'm afraid. We're at time. Always appreciate your insights. Jesse Moores there from Stadium Capital. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Aaron. Speak soon.